Welcome back to the People's Guild. If you are invested in Splinterlands, or if you are just curious about Splinterlands, then this podcast is for you. In this episode, we chat to one of Splinterland's most weirdest beards. Enjoy.
And let's go ahead and kick it off. So we've got a pretty special guest coming to the show on the People's Guild today. So without further ado, let's introduce the true champion of the people, the Weird, the Beard, the legend, the Weirdbeard himself. So welcome to the show, Weirdbeard. Thanks for hopping on.
Hello. And I just want to say content creators like you guys are the lifeblood of this game. You know, from the very, very top, I want to say appreciate any time somebody takes extra time to talk about Splinterlands. So to have an entire podcast, you know, like I'm super like grateful for you guys.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's great to have you, man. Yeah, I'm just kind of interested to find out about your time in radio before we get into the Splinterlands ecosystem. Can you give us like a little bit of a background, like from your, you know, like your time in radio to Splinterlands?
Yes. So I've done radio and TV for 10 years now. I started in West Virginia University as a loser nightclub DJ. And I was like, you know what? I can't do this for my entire life. Like at some point I have to learn a real skill and do that as a job. And I moved over to radio from there. And I did West Virginia, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., South Bend, Indiana, Portland, Oregon, back to Detroit, Michigan, where I'm originally from. And that entire time bounced around doing like country radio, top 40 radio. I did a night show with Wiz Khalifa's DJ, you know, DJ Bonix. Shout out to Bonix. He's my guy. You know, working with huge talent, working with like label reps and making sure that we did all kinds of cool shows. Like I still DJ'd in nightclubs. But while I was along radio changed from just people who would talk on the air, right? They became really heavily invested in the back end of stuff, of doing digital content, being able to produce web articles and like podcasting your shows. And like, so all these different digital skills I picked up as I became like a producer, right? So I did much more behind the scenes work than actually talking on radio the farther I got in my career. And the last 2 years of working in radio, I actually worked for a radio company that the owners had a like 5-minute meeting with Robert Kraft, the head of the Patriots, right? And they go, "Hello, Mr. Kraft, how do we make lots of money?" And Robert Kraft was like, "Esports." And so they just were like, okay. So they went and bought a professional Overwatch team, the Houston Outlaws, and they picked up a syndicated radio show that did esports and video games. And it was all over the US and Canada. And they brought me on from a throwback hip hop radio station to running this like brand behind the scenes of esports and video games. It's a totally digital product, like, and it really got me into doing something that I had, you know, been a fan of for a long time, which was general esports of video games. I was born and bred on like CSGO, tac shooters type of a thing. I'm a casual player of Apex Legends, of Valorant, of fighting games like Tekken or Street Fighter. Big fan of Halo, like all sorts of things like that. So it married a lot of like digital skills I already had and into doing video games and esports. And they shut the project down in November of last year, and found my way into Splinterlands doing the esports and marketing stuff.
Nice.
Oh man, yeah, I'm really glad that we took the time to kind of hear your backstory. It's a much more kind of clean trajectory than I imagined. Like, how do you go from radio, which is such an old school, medium, to essentially cutting edge technology in the form of video games on the blockchain, right? And I got to ask real quickly, Robert Kraft, who was whispering in his ear that his words of wisdom was, this old dude who's longtime NFL head is dropping esports as the way to earn a dime. That's a pretty solid shout out.
It's crazy because like you would think like, oh no, he's going to give penny stocks or something like that. Robert Kraft has his hands in so many esports orgs, from, like the Overwatch League, from funding a whole bunch of other like games media stuff. Robert Kraft sees that as the way of like connecting with the next age, right? Like radio struggles to connect with people under the age of 35. It's still like a massively used medium. People love listening to radio, but they don't get information or seek it out anymore. It's just like white noise in the background, right? So it makes more sense when you really kind of pencil it out and you see, oh, an industry that's struggling to connect with younger audiences. Where do they go? Video games. You know what I mean? Like it's a really easy thing to convince the old white guys who run those companies to be like, but they have money. So yeah, like it's fun. And I think when, like I said, when you talk about it, it makes a lot more sense than just like seeing it on paper and be like, oh, this bozo worked in radio for 10 years.
So, so how is it kind of like with like radio and now you're working at Splinterlands? Like, do you miss the kind of like the personal touch, like speaking to people face to face, or and like compared to what you're doing now, like what elements of radio do you miss?
The one thing I will say about radio is that in its current state, it's very much a homogenized, corporatized product, right? Like it's over the past 10, 20 years, it's been shrunk down into like as many one size fits all like options that you can give, right? But radio at its core was founded on being like outlaws, being rebels, you know what I mean? Like a lot of the things that yeah, exactly. Like that's the heart and soul of it. So the one thing that we could do more of in radio was have a weird, goofy idea and then just go. You know what I mean? Like, because you do so many radio shows that if something's a flop, it's like, okay, well, we won't do that again. Hopefully not too many people heard that. But in Splinterlands, because there's so many like outside pressures and you know what I mean? Like it's a much more scrutinized product. Because it takes the development time and it takes all this kinds of stuff. It makes it less agile than something like radio where, you know, you can wake up at 5 a.m. and be like, hey, this is what we're going to do on air today and just go in and make it happen.
Nice. So like, do you feel it more like scrutinized Splinterlands is that because you're so into it, like you're on Discord all the time? Is that like one of the reasons why it feels so scrutinized?
That, and it's also because there's like radio just goes into the air, right? Like it doesn't really, it either entertains or it doesn't. Like those are the two options that you kind of are playing with. In Splinterlands, you have like investors and not just like in the game, in the company. You have a board of people that you're responsible to. You have a lot of things that like small pivots can have these wide ripples that go very far. You know, like one of the core problems that we really work with and are working through in the tournament scenes for Splinterlands specifically is like, how do we combat inflation of ranks, right? Like ranks are very highly inflated from before I started, right? Like gold players were actually playing at silver and silver was playing at, you know, bronze and bronze was playing at novice and it like pressed everything down. So then as we start to pull it apart, you know what I mean? Like I can just schedule tournaments a different way and it can affect how people see upstream and like are investing or buying cards or like before I did Chaos Legion only tournaments, people were like, I make more just going and playing ranked than I do in tournaments. But now you put in Chaos Legion tournaments, all of a sudden people who are newer to the game are able to compete and start doing these things. Right. So it's just like, it's very much, you can't just pull one Jenga block because there's so many other things that come along with it that maybe scrutinized isn't like the best word because it makes it feel like we can't do anything, but it's more like you have to like measure twice, cut once type of a situation. Because if you mess something up, like it's not good.
and all the while, I think it's worth pointing out that, you know, if you take a step back from, you know, kind of the macro level, just the industry as a whole is so heavily scrutinized. It's as soon as you hear NFT or blockchain or crypto associated with any business, it's kind of, you know, gets a lot of those folks to kind of second guess and take a step back and scratch their heads. So.
Well, and it's like you have to be squeaky clean. Like I told you before, I come from the world of mainstream gaming, right? Where like NFT is a very, very, very dirty word. People do not take kindly to it, but it's because their only experience has been monkey JPEGs. And like, it's a very tough stigma to kind of combat. So when we're doing the esports stuff, we have to be so on top of our ish, because if we mess it up, people just go, oh, NFTs. What did we expect? You know what I mean? That
explains it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, like we're one of the big things we're doing for tournaments is really seeking out like endemic partners, right? So like businesses that are already involved in traditional esports, or when we go to like a third party tournament organizer, right? When they go, hey, how do we want to brand this tournament? Our examples are that of like what Riot is doing for League of Legends or Valorant or any of the large, tier one esports that exist. Because if we don't bring the fire on it and kind of like, mess it up, it looks even worse just because they attach NFTs and all that kind of stuff. The way you paper it over is to make it as like the term we use is frictionless crypto, right? When people sign up, they buy a spellbook code, they're generating a wallet and not even thinking about it, right? When they're playing in tournaments and they're competing and going head to head and they feel like excited that they won, they're not looking at like, oh, my SPS number goes up and then I have to go check the tokenomics of it. Like they're just excited that they won, right? So NFT as a utility is great. Fun is the number one selling factor. That's what I always argue to people is like esports is kind of like a weird catch-all phrase for video game stuff. But I tell people we don't sell esports, we don't sell cards, we don't sell NFTs, we sell fun. And that's one of the things that's missing in just esports and like blockchain gaming in whole, I would say.
Yeah, you mentioned before as well, like about how Splinterlands is, or the main way for Splinterlands to grow is to create, for tournaments and to create this storyline. So like how close are we to get this coming to fruition, like tournaments, like in the way that you hope?
So I mean, there's a lot to be done for tournaments. We're definitely in the first, like a lot of these are going to be product releases of like, all right, let's get this thing done. And then we have to go back in the dev queue one more time because they're working on stuff consistently, right? It's not like they finish something for tournaments and they are like, well, what do we do now, boys? Like there's already things that are in a backlog behind it. So every time you finish something, then your next thing gets put back into the hopper and then works its way back up, right? So we're actually really close on being able to deliver on our first like tournament overhaul product. Do I think that that is going to have a massive impact? Absolutely. This thing that we're talking about is something that's geared at both new players and players that are in the game but don't have a ton of financial resources, right? Like that's one of the largest things that kind of like turns people off is that they see money. And even if it's like, hey, 20 SPS, while not a lot, it's still a thing that a lot of gamers are not accustomed to, right? Like they buy a game or they do like battle passes, but they don't do price per interaction, right? Like that's one of the things that's tough for tournaments is, oh yeah, not only do you have to buy the cards, but then you have to have all of this SPS staked. You have to make sure that you're entering into the correct tournaments that have the correct format for you to be able to play in. So one of our first things that we're really working on that's going to be coming out, hopefully, in the near future is targeting players who are affected both outside of the game and inside of the game. Because at the end of the day, like esports and the way that it should be played should be fun to just watch, right? Yeah. Like one of the things that Magic the Gathering on their pro tour really struggled on was getting people that were not already Magic fans to care about it. Like that, you know what I mean? Like it's great to have a super diehard base, but you consistently have to be making the tent bigger and trying to reach new people, right? Like our next goal is going to be going after Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone players, right? Maybe they are sick of having their cards locked behind paywalls the entire time. Maybe they're sick of never truly owning what they're doing. People who are also in Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone are already pretty crypto adjacent. So going after them is not like a huge education play. You're just more like, hey guys, here's a fun card game that like you're going to really enjoy how the tournaments and how the play works. And then they're already kind of like open to the next step of playing on that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's the first thing. Like we want more than the first thing that's in development. I want to be able to do locked tiers so that it's almost like a season-long tournament series to where you don't go and play diamond one day and bronze the next. You just go, hey, this entire time I'm going to play in a daily tournament, but I lock my level to diamond stuff. We need to be able to have Swiss bracket matches. Right now, everything is pool play, and that's not great for like a viewing experience once you get to like live series, right?
What is Swiss jacket? Sorry, what did you say?
No, Swiss bracket. So like,
Swiss bracket.
Yeah, so it's like you play in like a round robin at the beginning to qualify and seed for like a bracketed tournament, so that it's like a 1v1. You go along and you drop down to the losers bracket and come back type of a thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Like it's just there's general quality of life things that don't exist in tournaments right now that need to be addressed and we need to work on. One of the other things that we do have coming out that I can talk about is how we're releasing a thing called streamer mode, which is just makes it like it's okay. So there's a really tiny annoyance that's bothered me since I've gotten here with Splinterlands, in that if I'm streaming a tournament or whatever, it shows me the results before I watch the match. So it's already blown of what happens. And it's just such a small little thing that by doing it kills any potential for people to be like, oh, it would be fun putting this on stream. You have to like learn how to work around making it a streamable, watchable thing. How are we going to have serious tournaments when that's like a thing that exists,
Yeah.
That's a great point. And weird, but before we move on, I kind of take a step back to what you just mentioned a few moments ago. And it sounds like you're not quite at liberty to kind of release some of the juicy details, but it sounds like you're alluding to, you talk about making tournaments more accessible for the newer players, those struggling with kind of the financial investment. It sounds to me like something along the lines of tournaments where folks are entering the brackets on equal footing, a la, similar decks or cards availability, something like that. Is that?
That's about as far as I'd go.
Okay.
But like one of the things is really even just making it, like I said, accessible for newer players, having a specific tournament series that you can enter in via fiat, right? Like you don't have to have SPS. You don't have to convert tokens. You don't have to have vouchers. Just like, hey, it's 50 cents to enter. Boom, here you go. That's something that newer players makes it super clean and easy. We also are looking at things like, gladiator tournaments, right? Like tournaments where you're able to use gladius cards in them. And the cool thing about that is like, okay, so we're trying to take new players and encourage them to go and get into guilds and get into these other things, right? Like it's about finding the other mantra that I really started trying to like bring to tournaments when I got here was, we need to stop constricting tournaments. It needs to be less talk about like, get rid of all alpha tournaments so that we can do only these tournaments, and more, how do the players want to interact with the game? You want to do gladiator tournaments? Why would that be a problem? You know what I mean? Like if we're able to make that happen, why not do that? And that's the same thing with this new tournament mode, is really like some players just want to be able to, there's always the difference between players who have and players who don't. Like you could be the most skilled player in the world, but if you just don't have the financial means, like it's a moot point at certain, you know what I mean? Like at one point it's like, well, if you have so many cards that I don't have, what am I going to do here? Like why gate out players that don't prescribe to that, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, I think everyone just has their own taste as well, right? So, like, do you think like something like Splinterfest is like that like a good opportunity to kind of try out some kind of tournament? What I thought would be a good tournament just to kick things off would be like between all you guys, Aggie and Chatter, Weirdbeard, just like, because everyone knows you, right? And then to watch that, I think that would be really exciting.
Yeah,
well, and being in Vegas, we should be able to place some bets, right?
Yes. I've always wanted to do to where team members in game have like a bounty reward. So anytime you beat them, you get like an extra bonus on top of it.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Like, because then people go all out. They'll be like, "Oh shit, I have to win this. Like this is going to happen." I want to, like, I think Splinterfest is going to be cool. We are doing tournaments there. But it's like more than anything, I want to be able to have these, like, I want to be able to have tournaments that you can do in front of huge live crowds like this, right? Like the end goal, and we're nowhere near it, might I just preface, but you know what I mean? Like you want to do in-person large events, right? Like how cool would it be to do, the Splinterlands World Championship after having qualifiers in, Asia, and you do like at Southeast Asia, you do mainland Asia, you do EMEA, North America, South America, qualifiers through all those, going to a big world championship with a ton of money on the line, live in person. it's dope. Like, why would you not want to have tournaments be, ending there?
Yeah.
Let's tweet out to Robert Kraft and get Gillette Stadium on the on the venue list, the short list. Well, Weirdbeard, it sounds like, and I think it's really important to kind of keep a positive perspective here. It sounds like there's so much that you want to do with tournaments, and I commend you for that. I'm excited for that. Tournaments are one of my favorite aspects of the game, but I think it's also important to kind of reflect on what successes have you seen, or what are you kind of hanging your hat on since you got here? You've made tremendous waves in kind of the tournament space since you got here, and I just kind of want to hear, what are your thoughts on your biggest wins since you came into Splinterlands as kind of the esports manager?
So I would say the number one thing that I hang my hat on is that I have talked to more players than anybody else on our team. I feel like maybe the support staff is able to probably beat me, but that's because they're forced. But outside of that, I have made it a main priority to connect with players at all times, right? Like,
that's why you're here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and that's not shilling. I appreciate you guys inviting me regardless, but more than anything, like, esports is about having a shared experience. And if I don't know how other people like play with the game, interact with it, see it, feel about it, I'm losing, right? Like, you're not going to win. And some of the other stuff, like the traction that we're starting to see in brawls, has been just crowdsourced stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I never say that I'm the smartest person. I never say that I know all the answers, but what I do really well at is talking to a lot of people that interact with the game more than I ever could. You know what I mean? Like, players play the game more than I do. I have other stuff that I do. If you want to talk about the tournament creation system, I can school you because I spent a lot of time in there. But like, on the day-to-day playing, more than me. So, like, I always explain it to Chatter and Aggie that, like, I'm able to identify pebbles in shoes. If you're not walking all the time, that pebble doesn't hurt as much. But when you do something every single day, that pebble wears down on your foot a ton. And that's why it's like, we've found all these quality of life issues that exist in tournaments just by talking to people and be like, tell me what sucks. What is the worst thing about doing in tournaments? And that's the kind of stuff we wanted to try to alleviate. We did the beginner series tournaments. We've done the Chaos Legion only tournaments. Both of those are the highest entered tournaments across like any other series, which I think is like good. It shows that more people want to compete in tournaments. The new stuff that we're being developed right now, I think a lot of the other stuff that I hang my hat on is less like front facing things that players would be able to pick up on, and a lot more about like trying to shift the mantra and mindset behind the scenes at the company towards esports being not just like weird. Like, no, you can make money, you can grow, you can find new players, you can do all these kinds of things through esports and tournaments. Like, when tournaments were first created by Aggie and the dev team, they were made and then left to sort of rot. You know what I mean? Like, they were put out to field, and that's just how it has been. You don't just change that overnight where you roll in and they go, oh yeah, we'll do whatever tournaments wants. Like, I wish I had the weight to throw around for that, but it takes a lot of time to be able to get people on your side and understand how important tournaments really and brawls really could be. And that's something that I think I do really well at in this company.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, me and Ben have spoke about this before. Just when we hear you speak, the passion comes out, and you've even said before, like, you want to be like the champion of the people, right? So I think
it's my wrestling nickname. Like, I'm the people's champ. I want to be able to come through with the belt. Because I think it's like, I said it at the top of the podcast, right? Like, I am not employed without people who enjoy playing tournaments, like, period. If there's nobody entering tournaments, they're not going to just keep me on to sit in this chair all day. Right. So like, my job is not to make a game for me. It's my job to find out what players want and then be like, all right, guys, this is what we got to make. This is what we got to do, because, I want to get more players. Right now, we average like around 3,500 entries per week into our different tournament series. Within the next 5 months, we're hoping to be able to triple that. Like, I want to be at 10,000 people entering into tournaments a week. That'd be great. And we only get there by me figuring out what's going to make people want to enter more.
I think like because the tournaments me and Ben enter, we kind of, we do pretty well. Ben more than well sometimes, but I think getting that SPS is great. But I think once possibly there's more utility given to SPS, then that will draw more people in.
Yeah, and one of the other things I really am currently pushing behind the scenes to be able to add a new item. I want to be able to put an item in that you can get out of chests that allows you to enter into any tournament if you don't have, even if you don't have the SPS staked amount. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be great to be able to go, hey, as long as you have the CP, you can enter any tournament you want because you got a tournament voucher.
Yeah, nice.
I want to be able to have, a tournament series that maybe has, instead of paying SPS, have it be an SPS burn mechanic. Like, hey, to enter into this tournament, you have to burn 25 SPS. How cool would that be? Like, I just want to be able to do different things with it because, like you said, like giving it more utility, more use, I think is how you continue to grow it. Like, we're starting to it's July, so that's 7 months. So I'm about 6.5 months into really kind of digging into tournaments at this company. We're starting to reach the bottom of the barrel for scraping as far as like adjusting SPS and collection power requirements on tournaments, right? Because entry, the SPS pricing is directly tied to how much it costs to get in, right? Not just what you're paying on the entry, but how much SPS is staked and how much CP you have. So that's why those Chaos Legion tournaments pay out less, because it's tied directly to what the entry requirements are. So if we continue to, like, when we first got here and dropped a lot of those requirements, a lot of people were starting to be able to enter tournaments for the first time. We've slowly continued decreasing, not too much because we don't want to kill prizing, but now we're at that floor for a lot of these tournaments where it's like, okay, if we drop these anymore, yes, more people are going to enter, but more people are going to start also leaving and not entering them because they don't see them as profitable as they could be. So we need to like find other ways to incentivize people to enter into tournaments. That's not just make them cheaper for people to be able to enter. You know what I mean? Like, it's starting to be the floor and we have to get creative within the space we have.
Yeah.
Has there been any thought towards kind of possibly adjusting pricing towards chests maybe, or, some sort of other tangible item that folks could potentially receive as ending up on the podium?
Yes. I will say that like we've explored for some one-off, like not the daily, weekly, kind of like bronze level, bronze or scarred hand bronze beginner cup, right? We wouldn't do that for that. We do it for like specific one-off ones with external third parties, but we've talked about doing physical prizing, right? So like, hey, if you're first place, you win this, but maybe 2nd through 7th win customized headphones from a partner that we have, or, you could do gaming chairs. You're able to do the plushies. You're able to do like all these different physical items that we looked at to make it tangible and real. Because I think that one of the other things that takes esports and the blockchain from being like this JPEG, monkeys to real is when people can touch, hold, and feel something. When they competed in a tournament online and then a package shows up at their house and they go, oh my God, like all I did was play with some online cards and they sent me this cool thing. Like, that's huge for winning people that like become evangelists for your brand and your game.
Yeah.
Not to mention the byproduct of that, if you're sending off t-shirts for competing in a tournament, all of a sudden there's, that much additional free marketing going out into the world, and word of mouth is sparked, and, hopefully it, kind of comes full circle there. Right.
Yeah. Cause it's like, I always tell whenever we talk to like partners is that we're not just looking at making tournaments that have big prize pools, because then it just turns into like number goes up stuff. You know what I mean? Like, they don't care about how much it really is. What's the difference between 1 million SPS or 2 million SPS? At the end of the day, it just goes into the number up there. Making things real is so tangible that it's not just like the physical prizing. It's also maybe being able to get people into exclusive events, right? Like, how cool would it be if we still had our partnership with Imagine Dragons, where it's like whoever wins this tournament gets a pair of Imagine Dragon tickets and flights to this place. Hey, you win this tournament, we'll fly you out to Splinterlands. You get to compete in a tournament there. Like things like that, when done correctly, not only get people that weren't previously interested excited about what you're doing, but it also makes it big, right? Like, again, I come from radio. Radio is theater of mind. It's all smoke and mirrors of making things sound so fun, so big, so engaging. Like the marketing that you can get off of flying somebody to Splinterlands and paying for a hotel for 2 nights is much more, you know what I mean, than it costs in physical prizing and stuff, then all the people tweeting about it and talking about it. And like, they have never played a tournament in their life, but they go, this is the one that I'm entering, you know, like we want to make it engaging for players for real.
Yeah. So,
awesome,
so let's sticking with the tournaments. What are your thoughts on like bots like Archmage?
I have very spicy takes on this. So people are going to they're always mad when I start talking about stuff like this. I get in a lot of trouble. I will say though, no matter any changes that I advocate, I always go with the community's best beliefs and like hand for anything. But 2, there will always be tournaments that are free and open for people to be able to enter in as they currently exist, right? So like the tournaments that exist today will always be there. In the future, if I do new tournaments that have different formats, structures, rules, anything like that, they will be in a separate environment. So the people who are very concerned with KYC, super anonymity, sticking true to crypto, there will always be a place for you in Splinterlands, and it's not about forcing them out. However, I believe that there should be an environment that if players want to be able to compete in, that is assuredly free of bots, free of alt accounts, free of smurfing, and agreeing to a new terms of service when it comes to games and competition. I believe that they should have the option to be able to elect into that.
Yeah.
I believe that tournaments, especially sponsored ones, meaning sponsored by outside third parties, should have KYC attached to them. I say that because when we are going, if I go to Intel and I go, hello, Intel, the company, cut me a check for $50,000 to be associated with this tournament. However, you can't tell me that I can't say no to bots, and people are allowed to play with as many alt accounts as they want, and they can win trade, and they can do, you know what I mean? Like, it is a nightmare when it comes to like having people trust that you're being esports competitive. Like that's if any, even within like the crypto diehard true believers, if they believe that tournaments were so overwhelmed with bots and cheaters, they wouldn't enter into them. Right. So it's more quality control and making sure that we can provide parity amongst players. Okay. Like I said, there will always be an environment to where you do not do KYC. There will always be the environment where you are able to be completely anonymous, have no information submitted from you, and you are able to play this game for tournaments. But again, like I think that if we are ever as a company going to make a mainstream push to true gamers, and when I say gamers, I mean people who own Nintendo Switches and an Xbox Series X and play Slay the Spire or Monster Train or Magic or Hearthstone or Heroes of the Storm or something like that, if they hear that it is overrun with bots and cheaters, they will never buy in. They will never even give it a second look, especially tying in NFT stuff. Like you're already cutting that giant pie into a small sliver of people that are even open to A, card games, B, play to earn games, and then the cross section of that as well. Why would you want to cut that pie even further by telling them that like, oh yeah, by the way, you have to just deal with nonstop, endless bots that would, take money from you or beat you or use outside tools that make it so that it's not really competitive, right? Like if I'm playing Apex Legends and, oh yeah, just everybody has hacks and can do whatever they want in the game, forget this. I'm uninstalling this game today. I think it's the growing pains that people are going to experience as this company shifts from being a crypto blockchain focused company to a company that is turning its gaze to continue focusing on crypto and blockchain, but also including more people into that pie.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think you've just got to, as a company, just cover your back, right? I think, it's so easy in this day and age for FUD just to kind of blow out of proportion. It doesn't take much. So yeah, to give people that option is great, man. Yeah.
And it's also, the other thing too is how else are we, there's so many intrinsic issues to be able to combat there, right? It's not just bots. Like bots I care about, but I also don't care about because I'm into like competition. If bots are beating you, even if it's not fun, there has to be some equalizing balance within the force of how, you fight back against that. But more than that, it's things like ult accounts. How am I going to run a tournament when I can have Bubkey 1, Bubkey 2, Bubkey 3, and Bubkey 4 all competing in the same tournaments, right? And that's no shade. It's just a matter of like, if I'm playing Valorant, you can't have one person playing as two people. You know what I mean? Like it's one player playing one account, playing one thing. And that's kind of like you have to shift towards that. It's all like, again, positioning ourselves next to these endemic esports and scenes that already exist. We're already rocking the boat with the NFT and crypto blockchain background. Yeah. You cannot rock it any more than that. So conforming is like what you got to do.
Yeah.
How close are we to kind of seeing the fruits of these labors in terms of KYC tournaments and
I would say halfway there. That's without any development work really working on that, because again, like there's currently exists a switch that I can flip for any tournament that says, hey, everybody that enters into this has to be KYC, right? But if we were to do that, we have to look at the lead time of like, how many players are we going to experience clamoring to get KYC'd all at once? Like we don't have the infrastructure to do 3,000 people in a week and KYC all of their accounts. We need to look at, okay, if we do that, tournaments that are doing that, we have to test out like how many people are going to be entering into them. How many, you know what I mean? Like, do we have the ability to really run a whole bunch of KYC tournaments all at the same time? Because the game has never had, hey, here's 10 KYC tournaments all running at the same time. We need to make sure that we don't set everything on fire in the back end first. And that, of course, goes back into, again, we're at the top of the queue right now for one item. This next thing goes back in and has to go back through the hopper one other time. And while that is frustrating from a certain perspective, from the other perspective, it's understandable because everybody wants developer time. Everybody wants to be able to, say, hey, I've got a cool idea. Let's do this. Like it's about like shared resources that have to be split up amongst many parties all at the same time.
Sure. Well, it feels like, kind of thinking back to the past few town halls and looking at the most recently distributed roadmap, the tech modernization. I don't think a lot of us are probably going to see the front end effects of that stuff, but from a back end developer perspective, that's huge, right? And that opens up, things like the non-card market and kind of allows for greater scaling. Should Splinterlands experience that big boom in player growth again? Yes. And I'm assuming that also applies to the ability to support these bigger tournaments and number of players that are involved. So it feels like there's kind of multiple pieces that are happening and moving, all the while the tournament requested development time is kind of moving through the hopper. There's kind of bigger pieces that are playing in the background. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's also even like we still have an issue with tournaments and brawls that get stuck all the time, right? Like that's so infuriating.
I thought that's just how it goes, man. I thought that was it's so funny. Every day at the end of a brawl, you hop in, you're guaranteed to see in the brawl channel, like, oh, my brawl's stuck.
Yes. And that's like, why would we go and try to bring 500 million people into tournaments that have never been there to then give them, hey, by the way, it's going to get stuck all the time and just deal with it. But
as the first experience. Yeah. That's hamstring from the get go. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so then we need to do the tech modernization to even just have them like clean house and know where stuff's at. Because, you know, before they do things like that, if you go, hey, brawls break all the time, it's not like they can go, oh, here, let me go check that real quick. Like you have to go through the entire code database. You have to be able to know like how to navigate and what to touch and what not to touch. And, you know, that's something that like just takes time, you know, like everybody thinks that development is much easier than it is. Cause you go, oh, well, that's the problem. Just fix it. Right. And it's like, yeah, forehead, like, let me just do that real quick.
So apart from like, you know, I know you're big on pushing tournaments, like to improve the numbers of the people involved in Splinterlands. Like is where else do you see like an avenue that Splinterland should kind of push to increase the numbers of players?
I mean, I could tell you. So the new tournament format, I want to talk. I need to talk. It's in my soul, but I can't do it. But what I will say is that in its current form for tournaments, I want to do lots of Twitch and YouTube influencer campaigns, right? Like we want to do that because the easiest way to get people invested is like, if I were to go to a large Magic the Gathering content creator, right? Streams on Twitch every single day to 2,000 people. And those 2,000 people are diehard fans. Hey, why would we not want to do stuff like that? But then you are faced with the issues of like, not only do they have to do it, but it's like, it's a two-part play. The first part is they just have to even educate their audience on what the fuck, excuse me, I apologize. What the heck?
That's making Final Cut, dude. Yeah. We'll just let you
know. What the heck all of the like blockchain play to earn gaming even is, right? How to set up a wallet, how to even like get SPS, how to do all of that. That's a whole campaign in and of itself. And then after that, then you have to get them to play a game. And sure, could we just delegate them a bunch of cards? Yeah. Does it look stupid? Yes. Because then they go to their audience and go, oh, by the way, you dummies have to buy all these cards and you dummies have to stake all this SPS that you don't know how to get. And you have to know what cards you have to be playing. And you have to know to go to Splinter Tools. And you have to know like all of that is so much. And it's impossible to translate because the content creators that are open to blockchain and play to earn gaming want it as simple as possible. They don't want to have to make it a whole complicated thing because it's already a tough sell to their audience. So like, I want to do those things, but until we have a tournament mode or a game mode within the game that is friendly to doing things like that, you're taking your bite of the apple too soon because those people see it. They go, oh yeah, this is dumb. And then the audience will never engage and the content creators will take the check, never talk about the game again and just go, you know, float off into the air. Yeah, they don't care. So like it feels very aggravating to have to like sit on your hands so often, but it's like, it's all about timing. It's all about, we need to make sure that when we do that, we have a solid plan with a product that like is going to sustain a whole bunch of people coming in. It has to look good enough. Like having, you know, like, I think even talking about guilds, right? Guilds are so confusing to interact with at the moment. Like there's not only no tool tips within the game that give you like a full understanding of it, but it's just kind of like confusing, right? Like unless somebody sits you down and goes, okay, this does this, go here for this, then you go here, this is what this means. It's again like an education play. So we have to refine a bunch of stuff and then go to the larger audience because that's when it's going to be the most successful. You know, like people all the time, I see people always going, well, I don't see ads on YouTube and I don't see ads on TikTok and I don't see ads on Twitch. It's like, yes, that's correct. Because it's like, there are stuff that we do, which is small, but that's in the state that it's in. It's more of like getting ahead of yourself. We have to do all of these other things. I think like it would have been foolish to go to a larger market before doing the ranked reward changes, right? Like while it's not a perfect solution to bots, I think people are much happier afterwards. You know what I mean? Why would we have introduced all these new people before we do that? Why would, you know, Modern and Wild definitely needs to get out because as it is right now in like tournaments, we kind of do like a janky, we just make it so that you can play certain formats, but it's not a true modern and wild to where you can play the reward cards for each. We need to get that done. Like things like that need to happen first before we put out this new tournament thing that we're doing to be able to go to a larger audience. You know, like if we're talking about in the future at some point with this game, equalizing the playing field, at least in specific instances, that would seem to be a much more amicable thing to show off on Twitch, because people go, oh, I can play that, and then go right to splinterlands.com and do exactly what the person that they were watching was doing. Right? Like if I see somebody playing a shooting game and I go, oh, wow, that looks really fun, I should be able to go download the game, start the game, and play it how they were playing it and try to do the exact same thing. Right? It's all those little humps that you have to take out of the way before you try to like do this large new player ingrowth.
Yeah, that first impression is obviously where the magic happens, right? You only get one. And it's so easy if we blow it and, you know, kind of go after the larger market too soon. And all of a sudden Splinterlands is just dismissed as, oh, another NFT game that's going to flop. So you mentioned earlier about the battle pass, and I've kind of been thinking in the background, is that something that we've kind of been, and we, the proverbial we, Splinterlands, like I'm part of the team, that you guys have been kind of considering as maybe a tournament series, and, you know, you monthly, have a monthly subscription to a battle pass. Yeah.
I want to do it. I want to make it so that there's a tournament battle pass, and that's what locks you in, right? So like there'd be a different battle pass for each tier rank. So the bronze battle pass is cheaper to buy. The rewards aren't as great as if you go to diamond, and it should be done on, you know, like, hey, every single week or every single day for a month, there's a daily tournament that you get to compete in because you bought the battle pass, right? And then the way that you do like battle pass stuff is usually to where you get stuff the entire way through. So as long as you come and you compete in those tournaments every single day, you should be able to get exactly the same thing at the end of the month, whether you won every single match or you lost every single match, right? That's what a battle pass does. But then you should do on top of that a tournament leaderboard for each rank, to where, hey, if I win and I beat so-and-so, it's worth X number of points. And if I lose to this person, it's worth a different number of points, and be able to have that so that it's like, hey, not only do you complete the battle pass, but you get something on top of it for coming and competing in those tournaments every single day. Like that's where I want tournaments to be. That's the cool stuff, right? Like that's the stuff that makes it sticky. It's about how often can we get players to come back and interact with tournaments. It's not a one-off like, oh, cool, I played in a single tournament, glad I'll never do that again. It needs to be, how do we take people from competing in one tournament a day or one tournament a week to one tournament a day, instead of entering once every couple of weeks because they remember to? How can we get them to be checking back for what tournaments they're able to enter? Like there's all kinds of things that make it more sticky. But again, like we're working with that limited time and framework of what's going to be the most beneficial now, and then work towards stuff like that. You know, because there's no other play to earn blockchain game that does a battle pass. So you're the first in the space to do that. There's no other play to earn blockchain game in the space that does a level playing field. They're all not played or, you know, pay to win, but you get many higher chances, like an Axie, if you have money than if you don't, to be able to win there. You know, there's other things in the space that don't exist. Like very few, you go to Gods Unchained if you really have to, for having a good tournament bracketed system and a national or international like competition series, right? Where you have qualifiers in India and North America. So like there's so many of those things that you kind of have to get your arms around and then decide, okay, what's step one, what's step two, what's step three?
This seems like a good time to iron out all these, you know, ideas, and because like now it's like it's the bear market, there's a big recession. So like before the next bull run, whenever it is, it's just like maybe a good time for the team to, you know, organize all this. So when these numbers increase, which, you know, like this time last year was when, you know, there's a big influx of players, right? And I'm not too sure whether the team were ready or not, but like for the next time, this seems like a good opportunity, right?
Yeah, and because again, it comes back to people in a bear market enter if it's fun. Because a lot of the people who are here to fish for money aren't in here right now, right? They got out with all the other people that bled out during the market.
I'm still here.
There you go. See? So it's like, this is the time when you're able to really suss out, is it fun, or are people just entering because they can win money?
Yeah.
And if you can figure out the fun component before all the people come back trying to also win money, it's like, that's when magic really kind of happens.
Yeah.
And obviously there's no silver bullet in kind of, merging those two worlds of, how do you satisfy those folks that do want to make money while prioritizing the fun, and kind of using tournaments as an avenue to maybe satisfy those things. Is mobile a massive piece in that in your mind? Is like push notifications, making tournaments accessible through the app and managing all that stuff? Is that?
Yes, and no. I will say no in the sense that 90% of our player base exists on desktop right now. But I think that's because the mobile app is so bad that nobody wants to interact with it. But that's the data we currently have, right? So like you have to lean into that data as opposed to like what it could be, because we could make an amazing mobile app and still have 90% desktop users. But there's also a hurdle that we have in tournaments to where you not only have to have staked SPS, but you also have to pay SPS over the phone, which is a nightmare scenario when it comes to paying with crypto on a mobile device because of the gated paywalls that Apple and Microsoft put you in for Apple devices and for Google devices, right? Each one of those is considered a transaction to where like Apple takes 30% and adds it on top for any mobile transaction, right? And remember, every single time that you're running a battle, because you win DEC or you win small prizes or whatever like that, that is all a blockchain transaction, which means that they'd have to add that 30% on top, right? That's why you can't win anything on mobile. You can't do any of that because it'd be considered, you have to pay that 30% bonus for every single transaction.
Damn it, Tim Cook.
But here's what I will say. If we have a mode that allows everybody to be competing on a tournament series that is all even footing, right? You would be able to run that and not have it be prize based because everybody is competing on the same series or the same level. So it's like for fun at that point that you're able to do it, but it's at least a new version of tournaments that might or could be possibly available on mobile. That'd be awesome. I think, even if it's not hey, we solved all the problems, we did it, go home. I'd still like to see it happen, right? Because again, maybe, like we do find this massive audience in Southeast Asia or in, like Japan for mobile players where mobile games are huge. Like when you go to India, mobile gaming is the gaming when they talk about esports. It's Garena Free Fire, it's PUBG Mobile, it's COD Mobile, like it's Apex Mobile. That's why you look at all these big AAA game publishers. They are making mobile ports of their largest AAA multiplayer games because the mobile market is so freaking big. So to not do that and not have a mobile app that's up to snuff, I think is dangerous and a not great video game remedy to have in the long term. But I don't know how we solve it for the transaction issue with blockchain and play to earn gaming, but also until we have something that I think is good enough, tournaments has to be worked in somehow. It has to be. I don't know. And I don't care how, just do it.
Mobile games are really like here in Taiwan. You just walk past people and they're just, those games, just like everything's happening at the same time, but they're just on it. And like, they're not earning. So yeah, if that could happen, in Asia, that would be great.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not just like, hey, let's chase the Southeast Asian market. It's just, I think that it's very odd when you talk to like American people about mobile gaming because they think it's all like Flappy Bird and Cut the Rope. They haven't been exposed wholesale as an audience to mobile gaming like the rest of the world has. So by not pivoting, right? But making sure that you actually have a mobile version that is really good. Like it has to compete with the Blizzards of the world. If you don't do that, you're leaving a huge piece of the pie on the table just because of preconceived notions that you have in America, where you're just like, gaming on your phone, you got to have a PC. It's, well, the rest of the world, they're not, they don't have the money to buy a whole bunch of desktops. Wealthy Americans do. What do people all around the world have, though? They have phones. That's why WeChat is so big. That's why Telegram is so big in a lot of the parts of the world. But then you come to America and they're just like, oh no, I have a phone that I pay for unlimited texting and minutes. Everybody has that in America. And that's not good because you silo from the way that people consume and interact with mobile gaming.
Yeah, I think me personally, like playing the game on my laptop is, you just waiting for it all to start up. But like many times I've actually, been out and I will try it on my phone, but it's just, the user experience is not great. And maybe my iPhone is too small.
Well, I mean, I think it's the app. Don't don't you piss Apple off on that one. No, our app's not that great.
So like when you it seems like when you landed in Splinterland, there was a few issues, should we say, with like tournaments from various people involved in Splinterlands, but it kind of just felt like you hit the ground running. But like when you first arrived in Splinterland, what was it like for you? Like, was it like with just like a mountain of things to do in the to-do?
It's still there. Like that mountain has not gone away. I'll tell you that. I think a lot of it has been giving direction to what esports and the tournaments are. Like there wasn't a mountain of stuff really, because like there was no plan for tournaments, right? Like it was just tournaments were a thing that were already being run. I don't know if this has ever been said, but like Aggie would schedule them and he hated it. He hated scheduling them. And it's like, it led to tournaments sometimes being delayed because he was so busy doing head guy in charge stuff, right? Like making the tournaments, that's whatever, who cares? Like I'm talking to, bigwigs over here doing stuff like that. So I think the reason I was able to hit the ground running so easily was because it was a burden off of Aggie and the upper team shoulders to like, no, let's have somebody actually just focus on tournaments. But then it's also because they didn't know, not that they didn't know what to do, but it's, if an item is priority number 10 on many people's lists and it's not like the number one priority for somebody, it just always gets forgotten. You know what I mean? Like it always just goes down behind stuff that is way more important. Because I'm able to just do tournaments, like I don't have to worry about Nate and eye candy. Like I don't have to worry about none of that. I don't have to worry about ranked reward charges. Does it affect tournaments? No. Okay. Have a good day. I'll see you later. Like I'm able to just do my thing. And that makes it super nice because it's like, you learn the language of it. You know what I mean? Like I'm able to sit there and just rattle off all the different tournaments and what the entry mechanics are. Whereas if I had talked to Aggie before and I'd be like, hey, Aggie, what's the staked SPS to get into these tournaments that you make every single week? He'd be like, because he has much more important stuff up here.
Yeah. So have you got a free reign when it comes to the tournaments and esports, or like to an extent?
Like, to an extent, yeah. Like I couldn't just go and blow everything up and get rid of stuff and be like, oh, everything's free now. Like a lot of it is it's like within a box, right? Like as long as, because the way that we actually did we started to make the beginner tournaments and the Chaos Legion only tournaments, the Scarred Hand Cup tournaments, was because talking to a lot of players, they go, hey, diamond level tournaments are just a double dip for champion level players. Like the player base is not big enough to where people who are entering into diamond are only entering into diamond and champs are only entering into champs. It's like, if you can get into one, you can get into both. So they just had doubled up pricing, which was already more than lower level tournaments. So you're like, hey, here's what we'll do. We'll take some of these diamond level tournaments, and we'll make sure to make a beginner one so that there's still diamond level tournaments that are happening, right? But with the money, the SPS that we had for hosting those diamond tournaments, we were able to break that up into many smaller tournaments and go, hey, this is going to get more people entering into tournaments, more people competing. Like, it raises across the board the people that are interacting with tournaments, and they go, okay, cool, great, let's do that, because that makes sense. Like everything for tournaments is a business use case. We have to be able to tell, why do we want to do it? And it can't just be like, well, I feel like it. We have like goals and metrics that we have to really work towards. It's like, is it getting more first time players entering into tournaments? Like, people that have never entered into a tournament before, are they entering? How many people overall are entering into tournaments? How long from when somebody creates an account or like purchases a spell book to when they enter into their first tournament, right? Like, as it is when I started, it was upwards of like 7 to 8 months of when people started an account and then actually went and competed in their first tournament.
Oh, wow.
Right now it's down to about five months or so, give or take. So it's coming down, which is good, because like, optimal solution would be, hey, you create a tournament or you create an account, and within the first 3 weeks, 2 weeks, you're entering into tournaments because you're educated. Like, these are the tournaments that I want to be being in because I can win money, right?
Yeah.
I
think that's probably like a challenge, right, for you guys to, just to get people into the game who just want to join just for those tournaments.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because I see tournaments as the easiest way to not only be prized out and win earnings, right? Like, everybody complains about like chess and stuff in Bronze League. You can make so much more SPS competing in tournaments. Like, it is not even a marginal difference. Like, it is a factoral difference of how much more you can make in tournaments. But the other thing too is that it's like, it's buried. You have to be told by a content creator online or your friend or something else that, like, hey, by the way, did you know that there's tournaments and that you should be competing in them? Like, there's one little pop-up that shows the next tournament that's up, I think, when you log in for the first time of the day.
Yeah.
But like, it's not doing it. That's not, that's nowhere close to what it needs to be. So somehow we have to market tournaments more and better against ranked rewards, like coming in and playing your daily battles. How do we get people to see tournaments as more valuable than doing that, since that's like the easiest thing for people to understand and go do?
Yeah, that's got to be something that's kind of, you get pointed out to you within days of starting an account, right? Like, first you learn kind of, how to read the cards, mana costs, what type of attack, health, abilities, that sort of stuff. Then general gameplay. Then, what are the different options of styles of gameplay, tournaments, ranked battles, yada, yada. And thinking back to what you just mentioned, we're going from 8 months to that first tournament, beyond spellbook purchase, cutting it down to 5 months. That's still a lifetime, right? What is the barrier to entry? Staked SPS? Is that kind of what you're thinking, or yeah?
Absolutely. Like, it's the number one thing. There's so many people constantly in the tournaments Discord that are saying, like, I have the collection power, I have the cards, like, I've been competing in gold level for forever, but I can't even get into silver level ones.
Enter battle pass.
Yes.
That's the answer. Nice.
That is what it is. But, like, again, because a lot of these solutions that we've kind of pieced out it all stems from that first month that I was here at this company, that I did a massive player polling of asking all this feedback question, right? Like, what do you hate about Splinterlands? What do you hate about tournaments? What makes it so you don't want to compete? What are your sentiments and all that kind of stuff? And then we take that and we started to draw, okay, here's a problem. Let's fix it with this. Here's a problem. Let's fix it with that. And like, that 5 months timeline is great, but it's still so long because that's an average. It's not like, hey, everybody, once they hit 5 months, starts competing. There's a lot of people that never touch tournaments and never even know that they exist. Like, they just get balanced out by the people that know what they're doing when they get in here and start and get right into tournaments. You know what I mean? Like, they were able to dump in and get 12K SPS and stake it. Like, I put out earlier in the Discord today, the entry requirements, right, for all of the tournaments that currently exist. And you look at some of the lower ones and you're like, okay, that's cool. You know, like we can look at Scarred Hand Novice Beginners. You need 206 SPS stake to be able to get into that. It's not that bad, right? And the Scarred Hands, which are the Chaos Legion only, are pretty good. You can get up to Diamond, and the Scarred Hand Diamond Beginner is 1,951 SPS. Not great, but, you know, not totally exorbitant. But then we go to the Summoner's Novice Beginner Training, which is like our lowest level non-Chaos Legion only tournament, and you need 600 SPS staked. A Gauntlet Bronze Wild is almost at 6,000 SPS staked. So very quickly, you know, you get into that other side.
You're pricing people out. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is again, like you just drop that and all of a sudden, more people are able to enter, but the prizing comes down with it too, making it less attractive to enter. Whereas you could maybe have people that are not competitive there, and it doesn't encourage people to be able to stake more SPS, right? Like you don't want to just totally gut staking SPS, because that's one of the main tournaments, is one of the main things to be able to use SPS for outside of the airdrop, which is coming to an end very soon, you know? So it's like, again, like I mentioned earlier, everything's about like trying to consider what the ripple effects of what you do will be. And it comes down to SPS staking there. It's like, that's why I think having a fiat entry mechanic would be great at times too. Hey, you don't have the SPS stake? Fine. You can pay in fiat to be able to do that. Or you can burn SPS if you don't meet the staked amount. Like having alternative ways to be able to do it other than just pricing people out, I think it's going to be better in the long term.
Yeah, that burned SPS option for covering an entry requirement, that seems like a no-brainer, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of best for both worlds, and it satisfies those you know, long-term players like, you know, a la Gank and Infidel, who, you know, have pretty big bags of SPS, and, you know, obviously burning is kind of the key to driving up long-term value for that stuff. Great call.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's like a lot of it is just I want to really work hard at trying to like be respectful of SPS and the people that have invested a lot. You know, it's one of the common complaints that we get is talking about alpha card tournaments, right? Everybody, if you compete in the alpha card tournaments, you say, I invested early. I took a risk on these cards. I didn't know that they were going to be worth anything, right? So I was promised these tournaments and they reward me for being an early investor. But then if you don't have the alpha card tournament or the alpha cards to compete in those tournaments, you go, that's a lot of SPS being given out to a small sum of people of, you know, that don't enter that much. Like there's a total of around 50 people really that can continually compete in the alpha card tournaments. So it's like, it's two parties there that you have to balance between, because yes, they were heavy early investors and should be rewarded for that. And they've been promised those tournaments beforehand. But on the other hand, if it's limiting the amount of growth, and if I could make 20 other tournaments from a single amount of SPS given away in one alpha tournament, is the, you know what I mean? Like what's the trade-off that we kind of hit on that?
How many people are many people entering those alpha beta tournaments?
So we have no beta only tournaments. We only have alpha only tournaments. You can currently find them. They're under the Gobson Masters tag. So anything that's a Gobson Master is an alpha card tournament, right? So I can actually give you season numbers. So over the last season, alpha card participants is 366. So that means that we had that many people entering into an alpha tournament over the season. It doesn't
is that unique
no,
entrance?
It's entrance overall. So it was 366 times that somebody entered into an alpha card tournament. And to put that into perspective, we look at something like the Chaos Legion only participants, 1,970. The number of people competing in beginner tournaments, 3,032. You know, bronze format and bronze all formats. So that includes like bronze alpha tournaments as well. 1,970 people competing in bronze, which is the most people in any format. So like, you know what I mean? Like that is, you have to take that into consideration and try to find like, is there a time that you can go to the people entering in alpha card tournaments and be like, hey, we're going to find a different way to be able to say thank you for backing those early tournaments or those early cards? Or is it, hey, I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's problems to be solved on that front as well. But yeah, I don't know.
How about you recently did the Brawl Hall? What were your main takeaways from that?
Brawl Town Hall, implementing SPS as an earning mechanic in brawls and frays, right? Like you need to be able to have SPS in there. You need to be able to retweak the prize tier ladders so that you are not incentivizing people to stay in a lower tier, right? That's why tier 3 has not filled out, is because there's not even 10 people there. So if you lose, even though you're one of 10 people in tier 3, you make less than just dominating in tier 2. So why would I go up? And it's dumb. We should not be doing that. But I mean, it's not dumb. I'm sorry to any team members. It's not dumb.
Final cut.
Yeah, it is a bad situation.
It's just a poor oversight, right? And seeing these things flesh out, it's a case of theory versus reality, and we're seeing it come to fruition. Yeah.
I also think that having gladiator card tournaments, the Gladius card tournaments, is massive. It needs to be done. And it's because it incentivizes people to own gladiator cards. Right? Like we're trying to tie a single line from somebody sees a gladiator tournament and they go, wow, there's a lot of prizing there. It looks like a lot of fun. I want those cards. I have to enter a guild. Why do I enter a guild? Because of cool, you know what I mean? Like it just keeps them so that they want to enter into tournaments. And then we also need to readjust how many are the fray composition. One of the largest complaints was there are too many gold foil frays, too many alpha only frays, right? We just said over an entire season, only 336 people entered into alpha card tournaments because they have enough alpha cards to be able to compete in them. Why do we have like 25% of brawls that are alpha tournaments or alpha brawls? It just doesn't, the player base isn't there to support it. While I appreciate what it was trying to accomplish, again, living in reality, it just doesn't make sense, right? Like we don't want people to enter into guilds and guilds and brawls and go, oh, well, I'm here, but I still can't even do the stuff that I want to do, right? Like the reason I think it's like with,
I was going to say, I think it's like most games, they have to evolve with the current situation, right? And this game is just constantly evolving. Yeah. And like you say, they have to find different utilities possibly for those alpha cards.
Well, maybe the answer is more kind of taking the ranked battle approach, right? Making the fray open, but you get some sort of bonus compensation for lining up an alpha or beta card in your brawl, and that way there's not a massive barrier of entry towards the fray itself, but instead you're just it's carrot versus the stick, right? Leading with the carrot.
It's even like, okay, when we talk about incentivizing players to go or guilds to go to higher tiers, right? As it is right now, people will be like, it's impossible to level up gladiator cards to max. You can't do it. It will take 500,000 years. Well, yeah, but when you have 60% of all guilds in tier 2, right? What the heck? Like, of course it's going to take forever. There's, I think it's up to 9 tiers for guilds. And it's like, we're not even at halfway, if you
there's 9 tiers.
I think so. I think that's what it is.
And did you say 60% of all guilds are competing in tier 2?
It's between tier 2 and then there's a ton of tier ones as well. I know that for a fact that there's like 10. Hold on. Moros, who's one of the people consistently in my brawls one. Here we go. So in total for what is it? Tier 3, there are 10. In
10
tier
guilds.
2, 10, yes. Tier 2, it is 5. No, sorry. 133. 133.
Whoa.
And in tier 1, 560.
Oh my gosh.
So so it's like, okay, so
where's the bell curve?
what's
right.
up? Yeah, exactly. You know, like numbers like that, or you're like, okay, there's obviously some downward pressure that's making it so that people do not want to go up. Now, again, there's also the whole investment of DEC to be able to level up your guild. There's a financial incentive as well that like is a roadblock for a lot of players, but that's because they don't see the worth in going up. Right. It's not only just merits and crowns, it's also investing that DEC and saying that is a worthy investment. I am going to go out of my way to do all of that. You know,
yeah, that's a big question. We were talking about this before you hopped on the call, Weirdbeard. What, if anything, is kind of floating around in your mind in terms of how do we further incentivize guild involvement? How do we further incentivize, you know, being an active member in a guild, you know, brawls aside, but how else do we drive entrance into guilds for players?
I think it's like having gladiator tournaments is cool because it's a unique thing, right? Like you have to join a guild to be able to get those cards. I think having more use, like the guild store needs to be worked over. You need to be able to have it so that it's like useful and people want to be able to be there. You know, cosmetic things like guild banners, new player avatars, special player titles, you know, some uber special like artifact from a level 10 store that's just like, oh my God, you know, to be able to have that would be crazy. You know, those higher store levels helps incentivize guilds to advance themselves. You have bloodstones, you have like, again, that SPS rewards, I think is going to be massive as soon as we do something like that to where people are able to, earn SPS by competing in guilds. Then it starts putting it on the same level as ranked play where people go, well, how much DEC do I get a day? And how many focus chests do I have to be? You know, like fine. The numbers nerds like stuff like that. So we need to tie that in more, I think.
How like with adding SPS for like rewards, wouldn't that kind of keep the price, like you just create more selling pressure for SPS?
I think not if there's also an alternative burn mechanic somewhere. And also making it so that it's not like maybe replacing DEC or replacing crowns in certain instances or certain merits, you know what I mean? Or having it be a percentage of if you go higher in the tiers, there's more SPS earned, right? Like it has to be what's the deflationary mechanic that goes along with it, not just, hey, throw out more SPS to people, right? Like it has to be, because it's even the same thing as when I talked about earlier in the battle pass. As a way to counter like, hey, you need all this SPS to be able to compete in tournaments. I'd love to be able to do a thing where it's like, hey, you can enter into these tournaments, but the more SPS you have staked, the higher of a prizing multipliers on it, right? So if you get like, you have a ton of SPS staked, you know, you win the tournament and you're like, you won 40 SPS, but if you had staked this amount, you could have won 150 SPS. Like, there has to be some of those mechanics that are more than just, you know, giving out candy, because that's what we saw with the airdrop, right? Like so much of SPS went to the moon because all of a sudden it had a lot of utility and you could do something with it. Now we're ending a utility for it. There has to be new ways to be able to mine it and implement it and make it so that it's not just like give more to more people and they get excited.
Yeah, just free handouts. I think, like personally, just having Gladius cards in ranked battle, you know, for certain rule sets, it's just a great advertisement. You know, of course, I think number one, it gives you practice to use them. I was speaking to Ben before. My problem with Gladius cards, they're great, but I've never used them. The only time I get to see them, it's like oh, like. Is this any good in this situation? Is it not? And then like you use it, it's like, actually, no, it wasn't. But if I get time to practice with it, then it's just a great advertisement for, you know, because if you're playing someone and they come out with, you know, this legendary Gladius card, it's like, whoa, I want that card. I need it. How do I get it? Join the guild. Can I buy it?
They're soul bound, right? Yeah, exactly. And like, okay, so this is, I will preface this. This is not a thing that I am committing to doing. It is something that I have only discussed, and I would like to do it in a format similar to this.
Yeah, that's not making Final Cut, Weirdbeard.
I want to be able to do, like I said, the Gladius card tournaments do it a real-time tournament on Fridays, and you do it in the afternoon. You broadcast it on Twitch. You get a whole, like, you get commentators, you get the whole shebang where it's super cool, and you get to do it so that it's like playing with them more often, having people interact with them and making a spectacle out of it, to where, oh my God, if you just watch the Twitch channel, you're able to see all these crazy cool cards. And then it also skips the NFT thing, because it's like, hey, you're in a guild and your account earns those. That's like the most layman's explanation that gamers get, right? Do a thing. You now have this thing in your account. You don't have to worry about buying cards. You don't have to worry about doing all this other stuff. You just get a guild, and it makes it social, so that it, like, people connect. And then all of a sudden, you know, they go from, hey, we're a bunch of people that play Splinterlands, to they have a Discord that's just for their guild, and they're talking about Splinterlands all the time and interacting. And they go, oh my God, did you see Chris on the Twitch channel where they just showed his match with that crazy legendary card? What? Like, that's the kind of stuff that's going to make it pop off. And I want to do that because I think it's special enough. Like, if we were to just show off like a scarred hand gold cup snoozer, you know what I mean? Like resident sleeper, it's not going to be exciting for anybody to watch. But if you do something that, you know, you advertise a kind of different format, I think it would do gangbusters.
Yeah.
And you're advertising both tournaments and guilds. You're getting the 2-for-1 there. Yeah. Great call.
And so also, it just like creates a great storyline. You know, like the way you advertise these Gladius cards, I can just see it now. You know, I can't even think of their names because I don't use them that much. But
yes,
you know, there's some amazing ones that you just like play before the tournament, or like you look through their decks and you just see what Gladius cards are, you know, available. Yeah,
I think the biggest complaint is that people say, like you said, they just can't use them enough. You get to use them for 30 seconds. They come out every once in a while. Like, you got to make them sexy. Like, you got to make them like cool. You know what I mean? Because if it's just, hey, it's here for 30 seconds, that's like a blip. That's not cool. You know, it's you got to give them so that they have the panache that they're supposed to have the entire time.
Yeah, well, it kind of just goes back to what you said before, right? Just create a storyline. Like, you've got great storylines for those Gladius cards.
Now, I have to ask both of you, what's your one thing that you think needs to be fixed in either Splinterlands and or specifically the tournaments? Like, I'll turn it on you guys. I've talked a lot about the things that I want to do, what I hope to see happen. But like, again, my whole mantra is talking to players. What do you want to see happen?
You want to tee this one off first there, Kieran?
Give you time to think, eh? I don't know. I think personally, for me, when I enter those tournaments, it's number one, it's great. I get my SBS back. And, you know, I get a nice, you know, I double my SPS or triple it, quadruple it. But then and then I have to play another 24-hour, you know, there's another 24-hour round. And I just kind of feel, for me personally, I've kind of done, you know, a half an hour tournament and I just would just be happy to run with my earnings just then. So I think for me, it doesn't need to keep going another 24 hours. That's my personal.
Maybe like condensing, you have rounds 1 through end of round 2 rule sets and mana caps like presented to you at once. And regardless of opponent is removed, obviously, for those later rounds. Is that what you mean? And you kind of fill everything in at once, and then as the tournament progresses, round 2 is already
like
filled out?
after the first 24 hours, then it would just stop, and then I didn't have to do another round 2. But I totally get it, you know, because I'm not one of the big boys, right? I'm not pushing for first, so I can understand maybe the big boys will kind of appreciate more time to kind of go higher up the rankings, but for the kind of the mid-table guys who get pushed right back down again when they hit the big boys, that's my.
I mean, I will say, like, if we do Swedish, you know, like the brackets that I was talking about, right? The Swiss brackets. I call them Swedish brackets.
They just switched to Scandinavian there.
the Swiss brackets would hopefully alleviate that, right? Because I like the 24-hour anytime tournaments, but at the same time, I think that if you're out in pool play, then you're done. You know what I mean? Because it's like you played through your pool play, you placed, fourth in your pool, you still prize, but then only the people, like you said, that are in the top 8 are bracketed out and then compete there. Like that's the kind of stuff that I think would help that. But again, that's getting us out of pool play and into Swiss brackets. But
yeah. How about you,
I
Ben?
think my one wish for tournaments is I want more Weirdbeard. I log in just about every morning because it's such a great way to, I've grown my SPS. I would say probably 30% of my total SPS that I've got staked has come as rewards from tournaments, and maybe only a handful I've kind of placed on the podium. I think just last week I got in one of the gold tournaments, I got 3rd or 4th place, something like that, and nice. I got almost 100 SPS, and that's it's such a huge. I would almost, and this is probably going to be much to aggro's chagrin, but I would almost completely bypass ranked play just to play tournaments. I don't care about the, obviously I love getting the cards and the DEC to buy more cards, but it's a lot of work. Whereas tournaments is just purely fun for me. And getting the rewards, but I also run into the storylines that you've kind of, touched on throughout your various conversations over the last few months. It's big for me. I run into those same assholes that beat me up every single tournament when I first started, and I'm finally like over the hump. I've got some of my cards leveled up, and I'm in a position where I can beat these guys back. Where I hope on their end when they're plugging in the team, it used to be like, oh, I see B Jangles, what a pushover. This is an easy win. Whereas now it's like, oh, this guy, he knows what's up. He's coming for the pot at the end there.
But see, like that over the hill, like momentum, right? That dopamine is what people want, right? And the shorter amount of time that we can have from when somebody gets into the game to when they get that dopamine hit of getting over the hill to where it's no longer just getting your ass kicked all the time is more beneficial to the game, right? Like, because that is a death valley. That's where you lose your players forever, is when they start and then they don't stick with it. They're out after 2 weeks. They're out after 3 weeks because all they do is get their ass kicked over and over and over and over again. So it's about finding ways to give people that dopamine, even if it's in smaller doses along the way, while also making it so that they're improving up that hill without realizing that that's what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be able to make more tournaments that are accessible early on to players who may not have any SPS staked. You need to be able to get them so that they're interacting with the tournament, guild, and brawl system earlier on without having to have all this stuff. And even if they're not giving the highs of like being able to go against gank and hold their own, like gank should still wipe the floor with a new player. It's finding them those smaller matches, like strength-based matchmaking, right? That places you against people that are other novice players, like real novice players, not people squatting lower level tournaments, right?
Not novice by skill, not by card set, right?
Correct. Exactly.
Level fields.
Yeah, I think generally, and one other kind of thing that I'd love to see in tournaments, and this kind of speaks to the wider Splinterlands, just kind of battle universe as a whole. I want new rule sets. I want kind of great. I feel like I've maybe it's just me and kind of the RNG gods frowning and kind of smacking me. But I feel like the last couple of tournaments I've been getting, I'm probably just imagining this, but I feel like I've had 11 battles per tournament, all of them under 22, 23 mana. And I'm just like, damn it. It's like, I want to get those, how do I fit my Chaos Dragon in there? I rented a kitty, like, do I play kitty and a chaos agent and like a fiend? Like, how do I make the most of this stuff? So greater variety in terms of rule sets, and I know that's something that Yab has been talking about. It's coming in the pipeline eventually.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you. So, like, I play a game called Super Auto Pets. If you look it up, you're going to make fun of me until the end of time. It's an auto battler that uses little animal emojis, right? And it's so complicated. Like, the player base is avid. It is such a good game. They have a great mobile experience. It's also on, like on desktop as well. But it's like, the best thing that they do, they have a ton of animals. They have 1 pack and 2 packs, but every single week they do a weekly. And what the weekly is they just take a mix and match of all the different kind of like animals that they have with the different rule sets, and they build a unique experience every single week from like, it's like a Lego kit, right? Like their base game is, we have all these things that we do, and you can play with those if you want, but every week we're going to construct our thing. So one week it may be like, all the animals that spawn other little animals is like the theme of it, right? Or another week it may be, hey, this one's all about buying and selling animals on your team. Being able to compete or to make weekly tournaments, right? To where we can maybe make it so that it's like, hey, it's all Death Splinter this week. You enter into this tournament, every single person is playing with Death Splinter, and that's all they're able to play. Or this week, we're going to do all rule sets that encourage splash damage. Or, you know what I mean? Like, to be able to do unique, like, take the pieces of our Lego kit that we already have in Splinterlands and create unique one-off tournaments that play with those Lego pieces in different unique configurations is going to be great if we're able to do that, because then it's like, hey, maybe I just have never played with Death Splinter and I hate it and I never touch it, but then I enter into a tournament that's all Death Splinter and I discover a new card that, like, this is my go-to guy now. Like, this is how I'm gonna play. That's the kind of experience that you want to build more of. And like, I feel like having those rule sets that suck, there should be shitty rule sets in the game. There has to be, like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't make everyone the best rule set ever.
Back to basics.
Yeah, exactly.
I like back to basics.
Well, to Weirdbeard's point, exactly. you have to have
yeah.
One man's trash is another man's treasure, Kieran. That's you, bro. Back to basics.
But like, if I'm able to create a weekly tournament, you know what I mean, to where I could select unique rules and build like, hey, these are the cards that are allowed, or these are the cards that aren't allowed, or, you know what I mean? Like, put different unique twists on it. It makes the game feel even more unique than it already kind of is, I think.
Yeah, I think like with these, since the new ranked reward update, this has been a real positive for the game that you've been given like a fire focus for 24 hours. Okay, maybe fire is not a great example because my fire deck sucks. But if you've been given a deck that you don't normally use, you're kind of more inclined to rent cards you've never used, and you just see these cards. Like I've found some great cards this past month just because of the new ranked reward update, and so yeah, that's been a great positive.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, one of the things that I think we're missing in tournaments is draft mode tournaments. Like, that's a huge thing in the Magic the Gathering community. I don't know if either of you are familiar, but it's like to where they put a certain number of specific cards in a giant pile, and all the players go around in a circle and they draw them one by one to build a deck. And then that's the deck that they have to compete with. I think one of the things that I really want to solve is that there's no end game currently for Splinterlands. Once you reach a certain threshold, here are the 4 card combinations that you need to play at very high levels to be competitive and win, right? Like, if you don't pick one of these combinations of like Llama Cube or Llama Cron, or, you know what I mean? Like, if you're not picking these certain things, you're literally inting yourself. We need to have a way to be able to make it so that it's like different, right? Like, it's the same thing of, I've talked about it a little bit before, and it's a thing we're investigating, is like creating a specific esports deck to where, are there cards that are broken, right? Like, if you look at Magic, there's certain cards that are not tournament legal. Like, if you're playing against your buddy, play it. You know what I mean? Like, if you own a Black Lotus, it's still worth a gajillion dollars, but you just can't play it in certain specific tournaments because it's just broken. Chaos Orb, same thing in that game, or that tournament series.
Yeah,
we might need to do that at some point for Splinterlands, right? Like, if cards become so broken, are they anti-fun? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, if it's dominating meta to that degree, that's not great. But again, that's like draft mode tournaments not only solve kind of that problem, because you're not you're not able to crutch, you're not able to pick what cards you want to be playing and you have access to, but also it encourages people to play with cards that like they don't want to play with, right? Like if I have to make a decision between two cards that I think suck and I have to make the coin flip of which one's going to be the better one, I think that's a much more interesting competition mechanic than just pick this card because this is the one that wins, right? Like you want to encourage people to play with stuff that they don't want to play with, because that's how you not only encourage them to discover new cards, purchase new cards that they normally don't play with, but also you have to kind of get to know the entire game as opposed to just, oh, Carnage Titan, go. You know, like I'm gonna play this guy and they win.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you mentioned previously, Weirdbeard, about kind of introducing something along the lines of like a pro series annual tournament with, you know, monthly kind of rounds that culminate in this big kind of final rounds with everybody that's won throughout the quarters getting up to that. Is that something that's still working towards? Is that,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think like, here's the thing, esports as it is for Splinterlands, it needs to be on two tracks. The only way that it's going to be successful is two separate kind of like paths that the competitive game series has to take. You have to have not only the high roller like circuit, right, which is like people that own the cards, people that have built the decks, they have them themselves. They're like the bracelet poker tournaments, right? It's invite only, highest players, and they're the big people on the scene. But if you only do that, you gate out 95% of your community into competing in these things, right? Part of the joy of esports is like, if I'm just a kid playing Valorant and I'm really, really good, like really, really good, it doesn't matter if I have bought, skins in the game, I could still get signed to a pro team. So not only do you need the high roller tournaments, but you also need a skill-based version of the tournaments to allow people that are the most skillful to be the ones that have access to, like cards that they may not be able to purchase, to show that they're like huge players of the game. Because again, what if you have somebody who just blows up on the skill-based version of the tournaments and they go, oh my God, you're so good. A guild might want to recruit them and bring them into that guild and sponsor them with cards and be able to put them up in that high roller tournament afterwards, right? Like it's all about funneling players up the ladder the entire time. And if you do just the high roller tournament, you cut out the ladder of people able to get there. You need to have a skill-based version that like gets them to try to achieve going to that high roller tournament.
So you got some big stuff planned, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, man. You've got the tournament town hall this Friday, right? What's going to be happening? Is that going to be similar to the Brawl Hall?
No. So Brawl Hall was focused more on gathering player sentiments and general like pain points. Like what are things that piss you off about brawls and frays right now? I already did that with tournaments in January and February when we did the player survey. Like I'm very confident I know what annoys players and what doesn't about tournaments. So the tournament town hall is more focused on dividing our energy, right? Like, again, I talked about how prioritizing what tournaments are trying to accomplish is so important based upon like where it goes in the queue, right? Why would I prioritize something that affects 5% of tournament players when everybody wants us to do something else? So what we're doing more than anything is talking to players about like, hey, what do you want to see from tournaments? Here are a bunch of ideas of things that we've maybe we're working on some of them. Maybe some of them are just an idea. Maybe some of them are just, like random thoughts, and being able to put them out to the community and the community go, I want these ones and these ones. And that helps us prioritize where we should be doing it. Right. Because then we're not only getting progress made by having dev resources poured into tournaments, but we're not just doing vanity projects, right? Like I'm not just doing a tournament series that I think is cool. I can point back and be like, hey, we did these tournament town halls. People said these are the ones that they're the most interested in. Those are the ones we have to do first.
And also if it goes wrong, then you say, well, it's not my decision.
You voted on it.
Yeah. And totally.
I'm assuming that this is kind of tournaments inside out, everything from mechanics to league structure to payouts to
formats to types of tournaments.
Everything.
You know what I mean?
Awesome.
Like it's everything. Because again, like there is nothing that we can just do without a dev doing it for us, right? Outside of like setting requirements to be able to get into stuff. So because of that, like I have to have all my poop in a pile to be able to tell them by the time that it's like our turn when we get called to the front of the line for the developers, I have to essentially just give the paper that says, hello, please do this exact thing. Like it's not, I can't get up there and hem and haw and try to decide what I'm ordering at the counter when I get there. We have to know what the thing is. So like it's making sure that if players have a say, you know, are they more annoyed about tournaments getting stuck once in a while or not having a skill-based tournament version? Or, you know what I mean? Or is it, we need a different mechanic than just staking SPS? Is it burning SPS or using vouchers or an item to be able to get in? Is that the most important thing? You know, like everything I do is data driven. It's not by gut. So, you know, this is just another version where it's like, okay, we've given the big broad survey. Here's time to like niche down and ask very specific questions about here are certain specific things that we could be doing.
You've been in the trenches for a long time. What data aside, what does your gut tell you is going to be hit home tomorrow in terms of, you know, top couple of pain points for folks or wish list for folks?
Skill-based tournaments. It's the number one thing. I promise you, like that is not only my feeling, but also from what I've gathered from the community. There are a lot of people who love tournaments as they exist now, where you have to own cards. We do not want to devalue cards ever, period. You know what I mean? Like, but giving people a taste of those cards makes them want to buy more. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a market force. If you give people access to certain cards that they may not have ever used, they get to play with it. They go, ooh, I have to own it. You know what I mean? It's like taking a car for a test drive. So I think that that's going to be something that a lot of players ask for. I think a lot of players are also going to ask us to focus on doing a better job of educating players that are newer and haven't competed in tournaments, how to enter and compete into tournaments, right? Like more competitive tournaments means that we increase prize pools. The reason, you know, like you love that you get your SPS back on those tournaments. The reason why that currently happens is because we flatten prize pools so that it's less to the first place person and more like a less narrow drop off all the way through. Well, if I have a tournament that has 500 people this week, and then every week moving forward, it's 1,000 people every week, then we have to adjust prize pools so that more people are prizing. You know what I mean? Like we're able we're earning more on entry fees. We're earning more on earned media, you know, people talking and commenting about entering into tournaments. So it's like, it's a chicken and the egg type thing where, you know, I think the more people that we get invested in talking and competing in tournaments means that we're able to prize more for tournaments, which makes more people come in, which makes more prizing comes in, which makes more people come in. Like it just feeds itself.
Nice.
So looking at the, oh, go ahead, Kieran.
Oh, no. Yeah. You can ask something about tournaments.
No, I was just going to ask, generally speaking, it's a pretty crowded, a lot of traffic on that roadmap for the next 6-8 months.
Yes.
What excites you the most? Is it tournaments? Is it something outside of that? What are you most pumped about?
I think a lot of it is the tech modernization. And here's why. Because part of what we do in marketing, because like I'm under the marketing umbrella, right, with esports and tournaments. Well, I don't exist on my own. And so like all the tournaments are a marketing thing. And we get hamstrung all the time because we're a crypto company, right? Like because we're blockchain, because we're that is instantly red flagged on most platforms, right? Like it's heavily regulated on the advertising side. So when a lot of like our base stuff that the website and the game is built on, because it started in the crypto blockchain space, that is what like the internet, the brain of the internet categorizes Splinterlands as, right? Like it doesn't see it next to Blizzard. It doesn't see it next to like other video game companies. It sees it because, you know, everything's like in one package as like a crypto network type of a thing, because it sees transactions going in, coming out, people making wallets and being able to interact with tokens, all that kind of a thing. tech modernization, where we're able to like break off sections of the game to exist in their own little domains and everything like that, allows us to do the job of marketing on other platforms much better. We're able to, you know what I mean? Like the game will start to be categorized as a game and not just as a crypto project, which allows us to do more and better marketing. A, that's targeted better with better data, but B, also we're not competing against like all of these projects that are, like buy monkey JPEGs. I keep going back to that, but that's like, we don't want to stand next to those people. We want to stand next to mainstream gaming companies, and the tech modernization is really going to help us be able to do that from advertising, which again, like my main metric is more people competing in tournaments, more people playing the game. If we do that, we're golden.
And tech modernization is the key to kind of unlocking those avenues. Awesome.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, man, it's just great, like listening to you speak and how the company is so open to listen. Like, is this one of the factors that, enables you to, go to work every day? Is it like, do you really appreciate this about the company?
I think what I appreciate more is that the company has people in management that are smart enough to not think that they know it all. Like that is huge, because I don't claim to know everything, but when it comes to tournaments, I know my shit. So like if I go to Chatter, if I go to Matt, if I go to Aggie, they go, what is a problem with tournaments? And I can tell them, and they go, we believe you because you do tournaments more than we do anything else. Right. And like being open to listening is different than like actually listening, right? Because they could just go, oh yeah, that's great, but we don't see any market value in that, so we're not going to do. Yeah, goodbye, have a good night. Like listening is nothing if you don't do something with it. And so I think that this company is really good about having people in charge that do make certain decisions, that are able to go, let's talk to the people that know this best, have them give us an idea of what we should do. And even if they still make a decision that I don't agree with, I can at least appreciate they heard me out. They understood what I was saying. They weighed it out of, including my maybe suggestion, and they just came to a different decision. That's way different than just being told like, we're not going to, we heard you, but we don't really care. Like, like goodbye.
Yeah. I think probably like with the company, it's kind of they probably just at that crossroads, right? Because they're growing a lot, right? In this past year, they've, employing lots more people. And, for someone like Aggie and Matt, just to kind of like delegate, like, because that's what they have to do, right? They've got to kind of release a bit of that power. And I can imagine for them, it was probably, I can imagine for me, not that easy, because it's like your baby, right? And you've got to trust these people that you are employing. So yeah.
And it happened quickly. Remember that, like, it happened all at once, where it felt like it went from 20 employees to over 100. Yeah. It's very hard to, like, I'll never forget the first month that I got here. I told you, Aggie was the one that scheduled tournaments. And, like you have the keys to the car essentially, right? It felt like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where like he was like, you're not going to touch this. And I was like, but I got to do it for my job. And he's like, you're not going to touch this. And I felt that though, because it's like, it's a whole ass account that does a lot of, you know what I mean? Like it does a lot of stuff. And to be able to hand over the keys to the car like that has to be like, you got to clench your butt cheeks a little bit on that, because it's, you're giving all of that up. You've done this. Like Matt, Aggie, and Richard kind of put Splinterlands on their back, right? And pushed it out there. It's got to be weird to all of a sudden have people come in and say, oh yeah, you don't have to do that anymore. Hey, you can just focus on doing the things that you're doing. Like delegating's way harder than it sounds like.
Well, like delegating might be easy, but whether you delegate to the right people.
Yeah.
Well, delegate and trust, right? Delegate and trust that.
Because like remember, all of the systems in this company are being built, right? Like it's like a baby, like it's slowly growing and forming. And so, you know, when they hire all these new people, like for esports and tournaments, it's not like I walked in and that I got to talk to the guy who was in my job beforehand, and they didn't leave like the notebook on the desk that has the, you know, hey, make sure you do this thing, and this is, you know, the problems that you may run
Don't
into.
touch the car.
Yeah, like it's just, you're not going to do it. And so like it's not just esports and tournaments, it's all across the board. So being able to not only delegate, but understanding what you can delegate and what you can't delegate. What's a thing that, like, when you're doing everything is the most important, right? Like you feel like you can't delegate any of it because you're the one that's like, I have to do all of these things. Just because you can delegate something doesn't mean you should. And it's like figuring out, what can we take off of upper management's plate that allows them to do things that I'm not allowed to do or able to do, right? Like I can't call up Robert Kraft and be like, hello, Robert Kraft, I'm just some schmuck that's like a low-level employee in this company. Let's make a deal. Like that has to be Aggie, that has to be Matt, that has to be Richard. So like the more time that they are doing tasks like that and less doing tasks like scheduling tournaments or coming up with stupid new tournament formats, or, you know, like getting on podcasts all day, they have to go do that stuff. That's why I'm in this job, is to do those things that they shouldn't have to do.
Yeah. Splinterlands is just like a whole big experiment, man. That's what I kind of feel, because so many things that you guys are doing, it's never been done before. So I think just like people just have to take a, you know, when they complain, they just have to take a step back, man, and just kind of realize that these things are just, you know, no one's ever done them before. Huh?
We're pioneers on the Oregon Trail. We're going to get dysentery and break a wheel and lose some oxen, but
yeah. So it's just like, it's like groundbreaking. Like it's just like happening before our eyes. I suppose other companies will be looking at Splinterlands and just seeing how they've done it, but it's definitely not easy, man. Like even, you know, I don't even know the ins and outs, but like to get it all working, like you guys aren't even working in the same building. This is like another thing that you guys have to kind of work out as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, like Cryptomancer's in Japan, right? I can't just call him up at, you know, in the middle of my day and be like, hey, can we do this, please? Like there are people in
coffee.
Yeah, like, or for instance, a bunch of the guilds are out of Germany, right? Like they're out of EMEA and Germany, and there's some Slavic ones and whatnot. And you know, there's a ton in the Philippines. There's some in India. There's a few Japanese guilds. Like all of that, coordinating all of that is like huge, and trying to just get them to do these things all across the world in a space that's uncharted, in a place that like can be hostile as an environment overall. Like there's already so many things that you're kind of fighting uphill on, that it's crazy to think that this is where we're at, because you know, we talked about mobile gaming earlier. The people that really kind of leaned heavily into mobile gaming at first were seen as goofy, right? Like they were, if you look at, but then all of a sudden mobile games are the ones that make the most money. It makes the most profit, has the most players, the most engaged fan bases. But at a time, it was insane to think that you're going to release an app on a phone and have that compete with like an actual video game that's on a CD, you know, like that's a totally random, chaotic thing to think about at the time, but now it makes total sense. So I think that like figuring out where play to earn and blockchain gaming fits in the ecosystem is Splinterlands is one of the only ones that exists in the shallow end of that pool. We have a foot in the mainstream gaming with the card mechanics, and like it's an actual game, and it's finished, and it's fun, and it's like people talk about the strategy, and it's not only talking about like here's how to get the most return on investment for when you play Splinterlands, but it also has the aspects of pulling in the crypto people, because it has a governance token, it has an eventual DAO, it has a white paper, it has an economic system. It's right at the nexus of all these things. So it's kind of like, again, timing it correctly to make the biggest splash possible and take advantage of living in both of those sectors. You know, you have all these games in the play to earn blockchain space that are like having some trouble. Like they're feeling the current market. Splinterlands isn't nearly as bad as that because it's like, again, it's a fun game. So you still hold on and retain all those players that are there for the game as opposed to just blowing it all on crypto.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. So is it true you don't have an actual deck yourself? I heard in one of your interviews you don't. Wow.
Yeah, like I will play through my girlfriend has an account, she plays. And like I watch a lot of content and I know I would say I'm like your average bronze, maybe low level silver player.
Okay.
But yeah, like one of the things that I walked into when I first came on was that people were upset about team members that created tournaments and then competed in them and did well in them because it was seen like an impropriety, right? Like why would I not tilt the deck? And I wouldn't do that, but I would much rather avoid that entire conversation. Again, specifically looking down the road at going into mainstream gamers, you can't have the guy who makes the stuff being the one kicking your ass in them, right? Like if I didn't earn anything, that'd be fine, but it's not, you know what I mean? Like if I'm winning all the time, all of a sudden it's Weirdbeard makes the tournament so that he can win them. And he only does these, you know, like, I just don't want to listen to it. And it also makes it so that I don't have a biased experience, right? Like, what if I'm playing in tournaments and I think they're great, and then I don't make a lot of changes because I see them as just fine when I'm always experiencing that? Or what if I'm always focusing on like, I hate Biz Kitty competing in tournaments, I'm going to ban that specific card. And people are like, you're just overreacting and it's fine. There's just too many variables. You know what I mean? It comes down to like, if you look at mainstream tier 1 esports, right? The guy that's the head of professional Overwatch isn't competing in the game. Like his job is to run the league. You know, Roger Goodell doesn't play in the NFL, and it'd be weird if he did because they'd be like, oh, every ban that comes down, you know, they're going to say that it was influenced by the fact that he has to play them next weekend. So, you know, it sucks. Like there's lots of team members that compete in tournaments and compete in the game and have decks and have assets. It has nothing to do with like not having faith in the project. It's way more just like, being seen as competitive integrity is so integral to what we do in tournaments that even the slightest hint of it just makes it so that it's like I lose any ground that I could have gained.
Yeah, I understand.
So go ahead.
No, go back.
I was just gonna say that it's also like makes it so that I can talk to players more about it. You know what I mean? Like it gives me a very neutral way to take stuff in, because if I don't understand something, I can't just have my interpretation. I have to literally ask, be like, okay, tell me more because I'm an idiot. Like help me out on this. You know, like when I remember first getting here and having players have to explain like how powerful bloodlust is and being like, oh, you don't know what bloodlust is? I'm like, no, I'm a big dumb idiot. Like, please tell me.
Wouldn't playing in tournaments, I suppose there's the other side, playing in tournaments and brawls yourself, you might see where there could be some improvements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I understand what you're saying.
And it would be like used experience where I live it would be great. But I feel like like I said, the trade-offs are just kind of too big. But then also, you know, it's one of the other things that I really have to do a fine line walking is understanding if somebody comes to me with a problem, how big of a problem is that? You know what I mean? Like, does it affect 5% of players? Does it affect 20% of players? Like, what's the threshold for that? Experiencing something and then like understanding that it sucks kind of gets tainted when I experience it, as opposed to hearing the same thing unprompted from, you know, half of the people that I talk to, right? Like it's way more about not how often do I experience it, but if I have all these people that I talk to complaining about it, okay, everybody's experiencing it. That's what I have to go after.
Yeah.
How often do you find yourself scratching the itch of ranked battles with your girlfriend's account?
So enough. I will say enough. She started as a mobile player and hated the app. It crashed all the time on her and she gets so mad about it. But desktop version works fine for her. The other thing that really I go through is, I mentioned him earlier, Robbie, who's head of our partnerships. I worked with him at my last job when I worked in radio for Checkpoint XP. So like, we also both live in Michigan. We interact frequently. We play Apex together. He will also play. He'll sometimes let me play on his account. Don't tell anybody, but I'll go through it. I'll play on his account, and it's, it's fine. Again, like if I spent all of my time playing, I feel like I wouldn't get nearly as much done as I do. So it's the trade-off of being like, well, I have to go look at like data spreadsheets instead of actually doing something fun.
Yeah. And kind of bring this conversation full circle, Weirdbeard. You mentioned that November you found Splinterlands. Had you been introduced to the game prior through
Never.
Robbie? Never.
I introduced Robbie.
Oh, you introduced Robbie. All right.
Yeah, Robbie got hired after I did, and he only knew about Splinterlands after I got hired and talked to him about it.
Huh. How did you find Splinterlands? Just out of curiosity there.
So after I got laid off from Beasley Media, which is the radio company that I worked for beforehand, I kind of had like a come to Jesus moment where I was like, okay, there are some things that I could do here. I can either stay in radio, which sucks because it's a very tough medium to be competing in and being employed in right now. Like, employees, the number of employees is shrinking every single year as a format, right? Like, there are fewer radio jocks than there were last year, the year before that, and the year before that. So I could go to radio and maybe be forced to move and uproot my life again, which I had to do for the first 10 years of doing it. Or I can look at a local radio station and take a lower salary and be like, okay, whatever, just get in and continue working in radio here in Detroit. Or I can pivot entirely to going full bore on video game stuff. I was like, you know what? I'm done with radio. Like, I've done it. I've had my fun, had my jollies. I did the cool stuff. I got to be on stage at concerts and DJ for cool guys. I'm interested in like having a real career that I just enjoy and not just get dragged into doing it to pay the bills. So then there's an entire network of games only job postings. One of them that I go through is called hitmarker.net. Shout out to those guys. Hitmarker's great. It's video games only, working in esports, or like they advertise jobs for like Amazon, Twitch, Epic Games, EA, Nintendo, Rockstar. And I did a lot of interviews with different like traditional video game companies, right? AAA video game studios, and some that are like video game esports production companies. And Splinterlands was one of those, and I landed it. And Liam Chatter was the one that reached out to me, and I interviewed with him, and that was all she wrote, which was great because it's like being able to see Splinterlands as a blockchain play to earn game nestled in between, again, Epic Games and Rockstar and Amazon and Twitch and stuff like that, is where it should be. But a lot of people, I think, kind of glossed over it because they just saw it as like, great, another like spam job board posting where people want to do NFT bullshit.
Sure.
Nice.
Well,
hey,
we go ahead, Kieran. You're up, man.
Yeah, just like each week we have like to round off the show, we have a weekly challenge with each other. But if we have a guest on, we will have a challenge against the interviewee. So are you able to get into an account to accept a challenge, or is it just not possible at the moment?
It's not possible on this computer. I have to be because this one is the one that I create tournaments on. It is Fort Knox locked down to like everything else. Like after the Axie hacks and everything like that, I am so paranoid. Like, you have no idea. And I also have a young daughter in here. So I worry about like if she were to ever get on and do something crazy. So it's literally on this device. I have it to where I can do tournaments, and that's it. Nothing else. No getting anything. No wires crossed. No nothing like that.
No problem. Maybe next time.
Well, listen, maybe after this next tournament thing that is being looked at and developed on, maybe that's something that we'd be able to talk about.
Brilliant.
Awesome.
Man. Brilliant.
Awesome.
So is there anything else you'd like to say or plug before we say our goodbyes?
The biggest thing that I would say is if anybody who is a listener wants to get in contact, the tournaments channel in the Discord, I consistently book meetings with players of the game. It doesn't matter how long you've played. I will take 30 minutes to introduce myself. I shake hands, I kiss babies, make sure you know who I am, ask you to invite other friends to compete in tournaments. And that, you know, like we are always listening as a team to not only grow, but specifically for the tournament side. I need more players in tournaments. I need evangelists who are going to go out there and sing the praises of tournaments and help keep me employed, because it's like this company is unlocked with momentum. If we want to make things happen, momentum is the number one thing. If you look, ranked reward changes happen because players put so much momentum behind, we need this thing to happen. Yeah. And if we want to see more with tournaments, which I believe is going to be so beneficial to players, I need player momentum, because there's only so much Weirdbeard is able to say. There's only so much that Weirdbeard's able to like argue about without having hard data numbers. So if you are somebody who is listening to this that has never competed in a tournament before, I will send you $10 in the mail and leave a voicemail saying whatever you want me to on your phone. Please enter into tournaments for me. I need it.
Awesome, man. One last thing, Weirdbeard. I'm sure as much as you've kind of strained at staying away from kind of active playing in the game yourself, I'm sure you're pretty familiar with all the cards, the artwork, that sort of stuff, working so close to the team. So thinking about the artwork for the podcast, I've picked the weirdest beard that I could find. And I'm curious what comes to mind artwork wise, card wise, that best matches the weirdest beard.
This is tough because they need to make okay. I've had this conversation with people before. There needs to be a Weirdbeard card in the game, but Chatter has like a human one, right? I don't want a human one. It needs to be like something that's just weird and goofy. I really enjoyed Chatter drew one time in MS Paint just like a rock with a goofy mustache on it, and it's like the ugliest picture ever, but I love it. So I've really wanted a giant boulder with a mustache on it. That's it.
I love it, man.
Brilliant.
Did you play that? Makes me think of you play the game Hades, Supergiant.
I love Hades.
Yeah, great game. Good. Makes me think of Boldy, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Boldy,
that's what I'm saying.
Boldy with a mustache.
Yeah. Exactly. Like I want to be that kind of a character. I don't want you. You cannot make me just like another dude, right? Because it's not that weird. And everybody, when they first meet me, they're like, "Oh, your mustache." So we're gonna lean into it. And
I can't believe you've heard that before.
Really. It, like, you know what? And it would it would be funnier to do like a fairy character where it's like a very that is very cool too, though. I do like a good Kraken, but you have to put a goofy mustache on him, I think. Even if it's just even
maybe
done
we can draw one on.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, we'd certainly look forward to the boulder with the stash card making its way into the game. Maybe it can be a tournament exclusive prize or something, and kind of represent your champion of the people mindset.
Very, very high defense, not very high attack. I'm not aggressive, but I'm gonna take the blame and take as much, blockage as I can for my players to run defense for them. So like you put me in the front line and I soak up all kinds of damage while your ranged can go from behind to be able to do it.
Well, let's vet for Weirdbeard being the first neutral taunt of the game. That's what I want to see.
Yes.
That's what I want to see.
Big brain moves. I like
big brain. All right, man. Well, we very much appreciate you taking time out of your evening to hop on with us, and look forward to what you bring to the game over the next couple of months. And
I appreciate you guys. Tournaments, long live forever. Enter into more of them, and as always, good luck. Have fun.
Thanks for hopping on, spending your evening with us. It's been a great pleasure the last couple of hours. Look forward to the next time we can run an episode together.
Thanks very much, guys. You have been listening to
The People's Guild.